Perspective, let's bring in Dong Jun. He was the official commentator at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Why don't we start there? Let's start with just the historic aspects of this Olympics. There's been all this lead up, all the problems, Zika, this and that, but this is the first South American Games ever. What does this mean for the country and the region, do you think?
Well, I think for Beijing, for China and Beijing, just hosted the Olympic Games 8 years ago. For the first time, they are watching, and we are watching this opening ceremony, and how the Brazilians are putting together the Olympics for the first time, representing South America from the perspective of an outsider. It's interesting, and we just switched from between what we see today and 8 years ago what we had. And it's very interesting and insightful to see how the Olympic movement has come to a new territory. And of course, it's very challenging whenever you come to a new place. That's why the Olympic Games cannot be rotated among the developed countries all the time. And these challenges are predictable and as well as unpredictable, but you have to face the challenges. And this is what you do as part of the Olympic movement.
How important would you say are these opening ceremonies? And given the fact that Brazil dealing with economic hardships, it has to be special, but just not too opulent. That's tough to get it just right, isn't it?
I just recall that several years ago, when commenting on what model Brazil or Rio will likely follow, or learn from, well, should be the London model or Beijing model. Brazil has already put it very clear that they will probably prefer the London model to be more economic, but now faced with even more challenging difficulties, they wouldn't even afford to, exactly with the budget for the London Games. But based on my own Chinese perspective, so far the opening ceremony has been very impressive, because for such a splendid and different culture to most Asian countries, everything would sound and look very exotic and indigenous, and also interesting and fascinating. And we're so impressed. And by reading on the comments on China's social media, many people expressed that they're being so impressed by the concern the Brazilians voiced about ecological changes and environmental changes.
You've mentioned the 2008 Beijing Olympics, so just give me some perspective. What does the Olympics do for a city and a region? I mean, how does it change things? I mean, the pride level, if you will.
Well, for China, it may be different from many other countries, including Brazil, because before hosting the Olympic Games in Beijing in 2008, China has been dedicated to developing modern sports for a few decades by winning world championships and even Olympic gold medals. So it wasn't, although it feels very different and first-time experience, it wasn't that strange feeling for the Chinese to do the Olympics at home. But for many other countries who haven't been used to winning or even participating in the games, hosting the games would feel very different. But for China, the legacy is absolutely there, because China is becoming a bigger and bigger, not only strong gold-winning country, but also a more sports-populated, country with the sporting economy, sport-generated economy accounting for a bigger share of the GDP in this country. So I think the Olympics, along with some professional sports like soccer, will be changing the lifestyle of every Chinese citizen in mid to long term.
The storylines have all seemed to be negative leading up to the opening of the Olympics there. The political landscape, the economy, the Zika virus, you name it. But now the storylines are probably going to focus primarily on the sporting events. So give me an idea, which Chinese athletes do you think we should be keeping our eyes on?
Well, if you want to look at those what we call secured medals, you definitely would watch badminton, table tennis, diving, some shooting events, and even gymnastics. But the Chinese appetite, I mean, back home here, people are they wouldn't accept very easily the loss of some medals that used to belong to China, but they have their higher expectations in some new sports or that are not necessarily traditionally strong for China, like track and field, because China this time around has a pretty good men's 4x100-meter relay team who promised to qualify into the final round, and also some athletes from the field like high jump, and of course because golf is coming back to the Olympics for the first time in 100 years. And because golf is such a sport with a lot of uncertainties, unpredictabilities, and a Chinese women's golf player who was once ranked as high as number 4 in the world and with a major title to her name, really has a shot to win a medal.
Dong Jun, thanks so much for your analysis. Thanks for joining us from Beijing.